Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Out of the Woods, Growing Income from Your Forest. Thank you so much for being here with us. My name is Lindsay Kazarek, and I will be your host for this evening's webinar. I am joined by my colleague, Casey Withers, who will be helping run tech this evening. Our speaker for this evening is Dr. Tom Hammett. Tom Hammett has 40 years experience with non-timber forest products, researching means to improve landowner and entrepreneur livelihoods through production, processing, and marketing of specialty agricultural products. A research faculty member at Future Generations University, he also serves as a professor of sustainability, innovation, and design in the Department of Sustainable Biomaterials in Virginia Tech's College of Natural Resources and Environment, and currently focuses on the use of natural materials such as bamboo and hemp and nature-based enterprises. He pairs his outreach for human and institutional capacity development in agriculture and natural resources with experiences as the director of a major global agriculture training and education project. This dual skill set will help build training opportunities in agriculture, natural resources, and forest sustainability that is appropriate for the Appalachian region. He is an active participant in regional NTFP research and outreach programs. He currently serves in leadership roles in 3 relevant research and outreach programs: to identify success factors in agroforestry and forest farming, to develop maple syrup products and markets, and a Virginia landowner livelihood and tree syrup development program. His work as research faculty member with Future Generations University focuses on developing and supporting NTFP educational and research programs throughout the Appalachian region. He has worked closely with many local partners in Central Appalachia to utilize Indigenous forestry and agriculture resources to address social and economic challenges. We are also joined this evening by Candace and Lucas Wiggins, who are the owners and operators of Maple Grove Farm in Afton, Tennessee. The Wiggins have been working with the Appalachian program here at Future Generations University for a little while now, and they have even employed their own Maple Days activities in Tennessee. And we're really excited to have them here because they will be implementing some new changes there in their Sugarbush, and we will see how they are going to be doing this here in real time. So thank you to both of you for being here this evening with us. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Dr. Tom Hammett.
Well, thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, Casey. But most importantly, thank you, Candace and Lucas, for joining us this evening. I've got a slide, about 7 or 8 slides here, so I'm not going to bore you with a lot of details. We really want to focus on discussion. But our focus tonight is on self-assessment through SWOT, which is a tool that we've been using for quite a while, very simple tool to help you in decision making. We'll talk about that in more detail in just a moment. If we get my slides moving here, we'll be all set. All right, here's our agenda for tonight. We've had our introductions, and we're going to ask Candace and Lucas to do a bit more self-introduction in just a little bit. And you've heard plenty about me. I'd like to meet that person that Lindsay was talking about. Thank you very much for the introduction. Well, first, we'll talk a little bit about just what is SWOT, SWOT analysis, and then Lucas and Candace will talk about their situation and the decisions that they're making now, a major decision they're making now, and I'll let them talk about that in detail. And then for the second half of our time together tonight, what we'd like to do is have an open discussion. And this could be questions about or points about what decisions you're making, what major decision you're facing, how you might engage SWOT, that I will introduce in just a few minutes. What information is needed to make these decisions, and then we'll have some closing comments. Of course, invite you to our next webinar. We have one every month. So we're glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. And let me just first introduce our topic, our analysis. It's really very straightforward. I hope you find it's a very simple way to start thinking about big decisions that you're making, whether they be production or marketing, what have you. So before we start, I do want to say that this part of our program at Future Generations is supported by a grant from the USDA. We have an ACER Access Grant, which is run for 3 years, and it's looking at how to increase production and to help with production decisions for maple syrup producers. Including in our program is a business development group of modules. And so we've prepared them, and they'll be available online sometime very soon. And these are self-directed learning modules that have to do with business development. I usually say enterprise development because most of us are very small in operations, so we don't have large operations. I did benefit a lot from working with Cindy Martell, who also is with Future Generations. She's based out in Wyoming. I'm in Virginia, so we had a long distance relationship and putting together some of the materials you'll see tonight, but also materials in the modules. But during the session, we would invite you to ask questions and comments. It might be easiest if we get those at the end of my session, and then maybe certainly after Candace and Lucas speak about their operation. That's only for convenience. But anyway, do feel free to chime in and ask questions and comments. This is supposed to be an interactive activity, a session. And then in the future, we do welcome your suggestions for other topics that we might talk about during these webinars. We find that we really want to respond. It's the best way to do it is to respond to the needs of maple syrup producers. So let's get started on this topic of SWOT. Why would you consider SWOT, and just what is SWOT? Well, SWOT's a self-assessment method to help you build a foundation for decision-making in developing your enterprise. It's a business technique. It's analysis that uses very simple. It's a very simple tool. And what might you do with a SWOT? Well, you might make decisions that relate to equipment purchase, new markets, buildings you might build, some sort of improvement you might do, changes in your operation. It's just a way to look at your enterprise and say, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's where we're now, and these are our strengths and our weaknesses, our opportunities and our threats. And so we're and even have a little spelling error here, but anyway. And then what we'd like to talk about a little bit later when you have questions is what should be included in the SWOT and what information is needed. We know that for the most part, major decisions aren't made alone. You ask for advice. You get people from outside your organization, outside your enterprise to help you out. So that's what. So let's look at what is a SWOT in, let's see if we can get that going here. We're having a tough time with these slides. It's the weather, I'm sure. Hold on. There we are. Okay, so what is SWOT? Well, SWOT is a self-assessment tool that looks at strengths and weaknesses, which are internal to your enterprise, internal to your organization, and opportunities and threats that are external. So what I like to say is there are certain things that you have control over, or at least you hope you have control over. Those would be strengths and weaknesses. And then there's certain things that impact decisions that you make that are external, that you don't have control over. So some of these you have control over, or you should have control over, and others most likely you don't have control over. Let's use a marketing focused example here. And then we'll talk about the example that Candace and Lucas will bring to us. So what are strengths? It's really basically what do we do best? What's our unique knowledge, talent, or resources? What advantages do we have? These are all things that we have at our farm or in our enterprise. What do other people say we do well? Okay. What are other people that would be, they would be external to you, but they would reinforce what you do well. You make good syrup, you have good labels, you have a good blend or whatever product you might be making. Okay. And what's your greatest achievement? You might think about these things when you're thinking about what is strengths. So the example I'm going to give you is perhaps for syrup marketing, you produce a high quality syrup, okay, and you have a state-of-the-art facility. Well, it may not be a large facility, but it's up to date, okay. You have access to additional resources such as SAP to increase production. These are all examples that might drive a marketing example that you might be assessing with SWOT. And last but not least, you might look at consumer interest in value-added maple products. You sense that it's not just maple syrup that people will buy. They'll buy maple sugar or a blend, and several other. A couple of producers we're working with are making salad dressings from maple syrup, with maple syrup. So these are just examples of strengths. Okay, let's move to weaknesses. Okay, remember, these two things are things that, for the most part, you have some control over. What can we improve in each of the 4 P's? The 4 P's are marketing, general areas. Okay, production, promotion, place, which is how you distribute your product. You sell it direct or you sell it to a bulk. And the last thing is price. So you have control over most of those. But you might be weak in trying to address a marketing need. You may not have the resources to promote your product, to advertise, okay? What resources are we lacking? Okay, remember, this is in a marketing context that we're using now. We're going to use other examples later, but what do others say could be improved, okay? Earlier, we said only your strengths would be that people like your product because of this quality, okay? This is a weakness, something you have control over, something that you're doing that your customers might complain about, okay? So here's a couple of examples from the marketing side. The lack of brand recognition in new markets, cost of new market entry, okay? These are weaknesses, okay? You don't have enough resources or enough syrup to enter a new market, okay? That and the cost of getting your product to the market. There's a lack of consumer awareness of pure versus maple substitutes, such as table syrup. We keep hearing about the log cabin example. I heard a presentation yesterday by a woman in New Jersey, and she said all they're focusing on in New Jersey to help the maple syrup industry is education, educating the consumer about fake versus real maple syrup. So these are just some examples of how you might look at it from a marketing perspective. You're making a marketing decision. These might be some examples of weaknesses. So let's go to the other side. Those things that have impact on a decision you might be making that you have less or no control over. Just taking a second here. So opportunities. Remember, this is external to your operation, okay? How do we turn our strengths into opportunities? Okay, we know we have good syrup, we have good, how do we transform that into new opportunities for sales, okay? Maybe it's through e-commerce, this example gives you. How can we turn our weaknesses into opportunities? Is there a product needed in our market that no one is meeting or no one is selling, okay? And you know, these are opportunities. You have to go outside your enterprise to see these or to determine how to meet that need. And who could we support? Could we support them? Is basically perhaps you have a vendor or someone you're working with or a value-added opportunity, another organization, another enterprise is making value-added products. So think about what is outside your organization that might be an opportunity for you to grow, okay? And this would help dictate how you face this major decision. So I have one example here, expanding your sales through e-commerce, that's outside your organization, adding market channels, maybe going retail if you haven't been retail, requesting the ability to fill a large wholesale order for retail sales. There's a numerous marketing type decisions that you can make, marketing type opportunities you can make to help in a marketing-based major decision. Let's see if I can get them to move now. There we are. Okay. Threats. The last of the 4 letters, SWOT, okay? So what obstacles we face? Again, these are obstacles outside your organization, outside your enterprise. Could any of these weaknesses prevent us from meeting our goals? Okay. Who or what might cause us problems in the future? Maybe you have down the line, you see some problems. Maybe a new competitor. Maybe it might be something you have no control over, but something else is there. About standards and policies, okay, and legislation. How would that change? Again, thinking about it in a marketing perspective, how would that change your marketing outlook? And are we competing with others to provide service or product? Okay. In some cases, some of the producers we work with have access to a commercial kitchen, okay, and they are able to add value. Maybe you don't have access to facilities or the resources to provide what you need to produce value added, and you don't have the access to it outside. In this case, maybe through a commercial kitchen. Maybe there's some dietary recommendations that need to be made. That's not always true with maple syrup, but maybe with some of the value-added products you might be considering. Another threat might be packaging requirements. I've been working on labeling for the last, I don't know, seems like 6 months anyway, but working on this topic of labeling. And I've learned a lot about what the restrictions are, what should be on a label, mostly from a nutritional standpoint, and the contents need to be listed and how they should be listed. And so there's lots of things to be considered there. Or do you want to be organic certified? If you want to be organic certified, then you've got to depend on some outside entity, that will help you become organic certified. That's that's a decision you might make from a marketing perspective, but it it means you have to have help from the outside. Again, the example I'm trying to show you is just this area of marketing, and we haven't talked about anything specific. I'm just trying to sort of give you some sense of what SWOT stands for. Here's a last example, a summary of what we saw earlier. Normally what would happen is when I work with producers, we get them a sheet of paper, very simple, and we have 4 blocks on it, 4 sections, each a quarter of the page, and we have strengths and weaknesses across the top, and those are the internal things, and then along the bottom we have opportunities and threats. It's not all these criteria, it's not all these factors that impact your organization. You also have some actions that you want to take to fill these needs or to meet these weaknesses or threats, or to match your resources with an opportunity that you see. So I just took the summary comments from the right-hand side of the last 4 slides, and I put them on this page. And this is how you might organize your notes. If you're doing this at home or you're thinking about it in the next couple of weeks or whatever. And so, okay, what do I have? Pull out a piece of paper, simply you don't have to cut it in half, but draw a line through the middle and draw a line up and down through the middle and label it strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and start listing some of the things that you would have to consider internally or externally as far as that decision is meant. So we're going to go here in just a minute to another a good example of this thought process when we talk to Candace and Lucas, but I thought I'd just go briefly through. Earlier, I alluded to the fact that there are a lot of folks out there that could help you with these decisions. Some of them have vast resources, slideshows and pamphlets and bulletins on the SWOT process. There's a lot available out there on the internet. I've just tried to summarize this here. Cindy and I put together some of these slides for our module I was telling you about earlier. We're trying to boil it down to the essence so that you can take this SWOT analysis and then use it to make some sense of the decision that you're trying to make. But you don't want to forget some of the people that might help you, local mentors and resource persons, okay? I tell my students all the time, before I send anything out that I've written, I always get at least one other faculty or someone else to read it and check it. These are resource persons for me that give me advice, okay? It might be another faculty member, it might be a graduate student, it might be a friend, a colleague, a professional. There are people out there that will help you check your work and check your thought process and add suggestions, comments on what you're talking about. There are specialists that deal a lot with maple syrup business, maple syrup related business. And the University of Vermont has a group of people that are really specialists in that. They do outreach, they do research, they do teaching on the business side of maple syrup. And they do a lot of work in the production side as well. In your local area, there are other resources. The Small Business Development Center is one of my favorites. I worked in a small business development center when I lived in Georgia, and it was amazing what resources were there for local businesses, for enterprises. And this is through the Small Business Administration, and these are local offices that are ready to help you. They have seminars, they have trainings, they have resources, guidebooks, they do mentoring. The other one that I always recommend is a cooperative extension service. So when you're making these decisions, sometimes you need a specialist, okay? And several states have maple syrup specialists. But don't dismay if your state doesn't have a maple syrup specialist in their cooperative extension service. These are land grant universities that have extension service, may not have a maple syrup specialist, but they might have an enterprise development specialist. They might have other specialists or ag marketing specialists that could help you make some of these decisions. Okay, the SCORE is one. I know some of you probably have used SCORE, very useful, especially in doing business planning and other things like that. But they'd be able to help you set your decision into the SWOT methodology that I just mentioned to you. And the question I have for everybody is, who else near you could help you make suggestions, help make your decision? So what I'd like to do now is turn the program over to Candace and Lucas and have them talk about what they've been doing and the decision that they're working with. And then we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions and comments. So make sure you jot down a question or two if you have them. And anyway, Candace and Lucas, we're so glad you're here. Thank you so much. I'm going to mute my mic here. And if you would just tell us a little bit more about what you're up to, where you are. I know I've talked to you extensively about how many taps you have and all that, a little bit about what you're doing. That'd be very interesting, I'm sure, to the audience. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Tom. Again, we're so glad to be here. Glad to be part of the conversation. My name is Candace Wiggin, and this is my husband, Lucas Wiggin, and we are owners and operators, along with his family, the Wiggin family, of Maple Grove Farm of Afton, Tennessee. We are located in a small town. The town is actually named Greenville, but our part of the county is named Afton, and we are in northeastern Tennessee. I came into the Wiggin family, I guess about 15 years ago when we first met. And I was just astonished to learn that his parents and his brothers, they were making maple syrup in the barn. And I've grown up here in Tennessee, and at the time, honestly, I didn't even know how maple syrup was made, and I didn't know that it could happen in our part of the Appalachian region. Just some background on your parents. Do you want me to introduce your parents, Don and Jody?
You're good at talking.
Well, his parents, Don and Jody Wiggin, they were both born and raised in Vermont. And when they moved to Tennessee, I think in the 80s, 1980, that was something, the sugaring tradition was something that they wanted to continue to pass down to all three sons. And we're talking very, very basic operations. When we have our open houses and we run tours on the farm, I always like to listen to my father-in-law, Don, talk about his early days in sugaring, where they were taking elderberry branches and they were carving those out to make spiles, and collecting in tin cans, all the way to where we are today. So again, when I first met the family, I just couldn't believe that this could be done in Tennessee. And they were making maple syrup every year, January and February. And they were basically just giving it away to family and friends. And of course, as the knowledge increased that they were doing this in the area, our circle of friends got a lot bigger really fast. And then, of course, all three sons, as they married and families grew, there was a much more demand for maple syrup. And finally, I just said, why don't we do this? Why doesn't this become a thing? I will say, though, it is not a full-time business. All of the family, we work full-time jobs. Only your mom is retired. She's retired from education, and I'm currently in education. So it truly is a passion for our family, more of an expensive hobby. Sometimes we like to tell people it's something that's really important. It runs deep, and it's something we want to pass on to our children. Figure out where we want to go next, I guess.
I guess what we're on here for is our big decision that we had to make for this year. So currently, last year, we were around the number of about 550 buckets. We used all buckets. And our big decision for this year was to step up and to start using some tubing. So there was a lot of if, ands, or buts, scary thoughts. What do we need to do for this? How is this going to work? Asking everyone, what their thoughts are, because it is a family farm. We own a little over 100 acres, and we all live out here. All three brothers and parents all live out on the farm. So it's not a matter of, okay, I've got 100 acres. I can pick and choose to put the tubing wherever I want to put it. Nope, everybody's got to be asked because we all own a piece of it. So in order to we have my brother that's kind of in what we call our little maple grove. A lot of its trees are right in his front yard. So he's got to be willing to see tubing throughout the year. So there was a lot of questions going into our decision process. And I guess that's where we probably need to start, is going through SWOT and what we could have used as this for our decision making. You want to start?
I will. That was actually, like he said, we had already reached a decision even last January and February.
Yes.
We were very excited, saying, well, next year and next season, this is what we're going to have. But along with that excitement, we even kind of laughed today. I said, we did not put this much thought into the decision. We just kind of said, we're going to do it. And we did it. But looking back at our acronym here and making notes of everything that we had to think about throughout the past 2 years, it really does put it into perspective that I think we're on the right path. We've got some great strengths here that we're going to share with you. So I guess we'll go ahead and jump into the first letter, S for strengths. Yeah. I guess to throw out there, we are in northeastern Tennessee, but even in Tennessee, there is very limited competition when it comes to producing maple syrup. Honestly, we don't know of anyone that's producing maple syrup let alone selling it to the public. And we have only been open to the public. I guess this is going to be our third season.
Third season, yes.
Third season open to the public. Again, I tried to do a quick Google search today, and I did not come up with many results at all. So in our area, we truly have a unique craft or a hobby for our area that a lot of people don't know about. So it kind of makes us a novelty. Something else, like you mentioned, the land that we are sugaring on, it is our home. It's our farm. We have about 100 acres altogether, and there are 4 families that live on this farm. So for me, I just take it for granted that I can walk outside and jump on the 4-wheeler and drive just 2 minutes over to the Sugarbush. I truly didn't realize until we started touring some other states, Kentucky, was it West Virginia and Virginia? I truly didn't realize that a lot of farmers, they do not have their Sugarbush where their residence is, that maybe they're traveling to other areas, maybe they're hauling the sap back to their sugar house. I really took that for granted, that we live within our Sugarbush. So everything was in walking distance. It's very, very convenient. Also, talking about our property, we have not tapped all of our property. We have what we call the Maple Grove, where the majority of our trees are. Those are our most mature maples. But then we have another area that is in a central location that has our sugar shack, and it has a very nice spot for parking. It's great for when the public is in here, has some beautiful trees around it so they can see that our buckets are there and we can do all of our interactive demonstrations. But then we also have parts of our property that we haven't even been able to explore the thought of tapping due to the elevation. We have a very steep ridge that is behind our house, and it is to the point where we can only access it by foot. And so we hadn't even thought about tapping that because we knew that we would not be able to get our ATV vehicles on it. So, you know, that has always been in the back of my mind because I'm thinking, you know, we need to go bigger. We need to go bigger. We've got all of this land that we need to explore, but it was out of the question because we have been truly on only a bucket system. And we knew that the amount of labor that it would take to haul that sap up and down the ridge, that was just not going to be feasible for our family. But the fact that we had it and that we've been sitting on it, that's really been a strength for us. You mean to talk about our culture?
Yeah. Oh, somebody says, did you say something, Tom?
No, just saying, it sounds like you got a lot of strengths. What about, did you think of any weaknesses?
Oh, we've got all kinds of weaknesses. I guess really to start off with, specifically speaking, you know, about the tubing aspect and our tubing decision, there was a lot of lack of knowledge around the whole idea of tubing. When I was growing up, of course, my father, you know, came from Vermont, and, you know, he had never experienced any tubing. And all I'd ever seen of tubing is really, you know, in photographs, or if I've gotten on YouTube or something like that and researched it a little bit there. So really that was a big hurdle for me specifically. I'm more of a hands-on learner. I don't like watching or reading a book and trying to figure it out. I like to experience it myself. So we really got started a couple of years ago attending some of the Maple Syrup Association.
Kentucky
Yeah,
Maple Producers Association.
Went to Kentucky's Maple Syrup Producers Association there, and then we went to Virginia when they had theirs. Yep. And gone up to Future Generations and was up there. So I've got to experience a lot and see other producers and other sugar bushes and how their tubing and stuff like that was set up. So that really helped me for somebody that needs that hands-on aspect versus looking at a catalog and seeing 1,000 different parts and saying, okay, what do I need to buy now? So that for me, that was one of my biggest weaknesses.
Another weakness that I guess I didn't realize was going to be a hurdle until we got into it. When I'm talking about this land that we have that is untapped and unexplored, it is unexplored. It is currently unmanaged forestry. And so once the guys got out and they started trying to carve these paths into the side of the ridge, I really had no idea what the undergrowth looked like, and how time consuming it was going to be to start putting some forestry management practices into place. I did not know how much time that was going to take and effort that was going to take. And again, yes, and is still taking today, and equipment as well. Even when we had Brandon Daniels come down with CDL, and he brought all of the tubing equipment and spent the entire day with us. Even for him, we're digging through trying to figure out where we're going to place the lines. Well, we couldn't even map out where we were going to place some of the lines because we needed to go in with chainsaws and really try to manage some of that undergrowth so we can see where the trees are and how we can connect them together the most efficiently. That continues to be a big weakness because it's not something that we can devote all of our work days to. Again, because we're working full time, these are things we're trying to tackle at the evenings and on the weekends. And there just never seems to be enough time to get all of those chores done.
Yeah. And I guess another one of our weaknesses that I'm not sure if it was a weakness or just everyday problem is money-wise. So we'd had all these buckets, and we've had these buckets for years. And we usually, every time we go up, I have family in Vermont. We go up, we'd pick up some more buckets while we were up there and bring them back down. So we've had all these buckets, for years. And going to tubing was going to be an expense. And it's the problem I think everybody has is we don't have enough money. So that was one of our, I guess, weaknesses is kind of looking at it is, okay, we're going to have to hold back on some of our buckets, but and add this tubing. And we're right now, what I've got planned is we're going to go, we've had about 550 taps. I'd like to put on about at least half of those on tubing this year, just to kind of get us rolling. But there was that expense of having to, flip the bill for all this tubing and everything. And it's something that, you not only look at the tubing that we have to put in. Now we've got to look at buying an RO because we don't have an RO. We haven't used an RO at this point. So there's another big added expense that, at some point or another, we've got to figure out how we're going to do it. And this is where, I guess, going back to maybe one of the opportunities, skipping down just a little bit. I'm going to skip around.
That's okay.
I jump all over the place when I talk.
All right.
Sorry. But I guess going to some of the opportunities there, I was talking with Brandon and talking about different grants and stuff like that he's had he's dealt with before, and trying to figure out, in the state of Tennessee, they don't have a maple syrup association, and they don't know anything about maple syrup. When we call our local extension office
At a UT,
they kind of, they're like, maple syrup? What are you talking about? That doesn't get made in Tennessee. And we're like, yes, it does. And they usually direct us somewhere else. And our good friend Joey at Future Generations there has kind of helped me out quite a bit with as far as leads and talking to different people. And he's been a really big opportunity for us that he's been there to kind of help us and steer us in the right direction with a lot of different things. But
and that kind of leads into another opportunity I had written down. We've got a really good opportunity in expanding our open houses that we're having every January. And this just started as a way of getting the public and really just getting our friends and family out on the farm and seeing us in action and seeing exactly what the process looks like. Because again, there's a lot of lack of knowledge in our area. So there's a huge opportunity for education purposes, for bringing people in for tours, for letting them tap the trees themselves, to taste the sap, to taste the maple syrup, and also to secure some sales. And we started the first year, I think, with maybe one Saturday for maybe just 2 hours. And we had so many people that we continued to go into the evening running tours. And so last year we were able to be much more strategic about it, and open up our farm on multiple Saturdays and have tours scheduled every hour. We came up with a really good system for taking them through the entire process, all the way from, going out into the bush to hauling it back to the sugar shack while it's cooked. But I think there's even more opportunities there, just because the people are so curious in our area. And we get the same questions over and over and over again, which tells me that, again, they need that education. They need that hands-on experience of, I didn't even know where maple syrup came from. So I think there's more opportunities there, on maybe even bringing in some other vendors. I loved, was it Mountain State Maple Days that we went and toured? I love to see that. And I kept thinking, we could do so much as far as, a weekend festival and have vendors come in and have food and other craft vendors here on the property. We've got the space for it. So lots of potential there.
Yeah. That kind of speaks to one of it. You're hitting on, it being a unique thing for Tennessee. That's probably one of our weaknesses, is not a lot of people know about maple syrup and whether there's real maple syrup. There's a big confusion down here, and everybody kind of grew up on the corn syrup, high fructose, log cabin style, and it's hard to breach that gap with people sometimes, is giving them the education of what real maple syrup is, how it's made. You get people in our open houses that come through and ask the question, well, how much sugar do you add to it? and is it sugar free? And you take it for granted because we know how it's made and what it's made of and all that, but there's just a lack of education all around the world, but in our little area here in East Tennessee, it's just not really thought of. So it's more of a novelty product.
So it's both an advantage and a disadvantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can you might have a couple more opportunities there listed, but I was just wondering, in the interest of time, we want to see if there are any questions. If you could give us a couple of threats. These are the outside threats, outside your farm, outside your enterprise. Do you have any listed, any threats?
Oh, I do. Packaging cost.
Okay.
We do have several different varieties of maple syrup, some infusions. We do maple sugars, and the more value-added products, especially, that we try to develop, the greater need for varied packaging. And I'm even thinking about, we have to have different labels for the front and different labels for the back. So it seems like the more things that we want to produce, then we're looking at packaging and trying to secure affordable packaging, but also a high quality packaging that sets us apart from, the people that are just putting things in cans and a ball mason jar. That's something that it can be intimidating. And I know I've mentioned it, that just forest management in general, that's one of our weaknesses, but that can also be a threat to us because we know that that's something we're going to have to continue to manage.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the audience can see that all these are sort of interrelated,
Yeah.
There is some
Absolutely.
overlap, but SWOT just offers us an opportunity, as you've done quite nicely, is to separate these into different categories and give it a little bit of order, but also it's a checklist. And do you have any other threats that you have written down there? Noted there?
Well, specifically, obviously with the new tubing and stuff. So you have this, you're adding the tubing. We've made a decision to add the tubing. Now it's not only just adding the tubing, but you're adding extra equipment. So everything's got to be upgraded. Your filtration process, having an RO, depending on how much tubing you do, we might have to upgrade the arch in our evaporator. hoods, different things, tanks and all that. And really when it comes down to it and you're in it and it's an expensive hobby, it comes down to money. There's never enough money. And if there is, it's always going to what we need. And that our biggest with everybody else is having enough money to keep the production going. We got to a point to where, we're making between 15 pounds a year. And it's not enough for what we need. We could easily be, selling, 200-300 gallons of syrup easily a year. And tubing was our only option. Buckets are just too manual labor. So it's going down, we have a lot in our family, but it boils down to me and dad when it comes to the manual labor part of it. So there's only so much time in the day, and
right.
Tubing was our only option really, to further us down the road. Yep.
So there's a question here, unless you had some other points you wanted to make. I thought we'd go to a couple of questions. We can always come back to.
No, yeah,
So here's
absolutely.
a question here, and me, I'm very interested in non-timber forest products. And the question is, have you explored any opportunities around other non-timber forest products in your woods?
No, not really. Well,
kind of.
Yeah.
With the apple butter.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if this fits in the category that you're
It kind of
talking
does,
about, but we do have a small orchard on the farm,
Right.
very, very small. And we've got some fruit trees, apple trees, pear trees. And in our area, a very popular product is homemade apple butter. A lot of our area churches, our own church, we make about 1,200 pints, and we have an apple butter festival, and it sells out the day of. So there's a huge demand for homemade apple butter in our area. And I guess I was just joking one day, and I said, we could always do a maple infused apple butter. And then that kind of got our wheels turning of, well, we do have access to the apples. We have lots of fruit trees that we're just harvesting for personal use for the family. We don't really associate that with Maple Grove Farms. So that is one of the things that we've kind of toyed around with.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as other stuff, I hunt ginseng when, it's time to hunt ginseng. There's quite a bit of that down here, but not really. We've not branched too far off. It doesn't seem like there's ever enough time to do everything you want to do, really.
So it's not just ginseng; there are other things too. I was wondering, when you were talking about the management and the understory, and you're exploring some new areas of the farm, you might come across some other non-timber forest products there. And one of the products that we saw when we were up, you and I were up at Missy's up on Laurel Fork. She's collecting some ramps and dried the ramps.
Yes. Yeah. Ramps are big down here. Yes.
So if ramps are big there, that might be something you might want to consider. Very good. So I think that, how about, are there any other questions in the audience that, I see the chat, Lindsay. I don't see any others in the chat. Let me look in the Q&A. Not yet. Okay. Well, I have a couple of questions, of course. Not just the non-timber forest products, but I wanted to get back to where do you go to get help? Because that was something I was asking very early on. And you mentioned Brandon, who, for some of you might know, he's a supplier. He supplies equipment for the maple syrup industry. Any other folks that you've gone to, and you don't have to name them if you don't want to, but you could just tell me who they are, because I think the folks listening would be interested in some of the places you've gone to get advice, mentoring. Besides me and Joey and future generations, are there other places that you've gone to?
Well, we mentioned the Kentucky Maple Syrup Producers Association. Right. We attended their annual meeting a year or two back, and we actually asked if we could join their association because we knew that there was no Association in Tennessee, and they were thrilled to have us on board. So we became an active member of their association, and we have made some very close contacts with farms in Kentucky. One of the farms that sticks out, it is Southdown, Southdown Farms. Seth Long and his wife, and just making connections with other farms that are similar in size to us, but also smaller than us and larger than us. And going back and forth on social media with them, asking them for tips and tricks of the trade. That was important for us because, again, you know, we have family in Vermont that, you know, they're on tubing systems and they have big operations, but we needed to talk to people that are doing this in our area, in the Appalachian, to really know, you know, what does your season look like? What are things that we can be doing to help, you know, prolong our season and bring more attention to what we're doing in our area?
So that's wonderful. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah, I was going to say, so as you can imagine, you know, in Tennessee, you know, like in Kentucky, in southern Virginia, you know, our climate's quite a bit warmer.
Right.
So that's something that, you know, we've really got to branch out. It's not Vermont. We don't get the winters like Vermont does. So
Right.
our research is going to be a little bit different than what their research is.
Right.
And that's something Mike Reckland, I've talked to quite a bit about with him. And a lot of his research that he's done and stuff, and that he's currently doing. He's been a pretty good resource. And like I said, future generations, we've, you know, dealt quite a bit with you guys up there, and it's been a big help. The knowledge that's, you know, kind of just been unloaded on us, and it's something that, you know, we want to be able to spread, you know, elsewhere. We don't want to be the only producers in Tennessee.
Sure.
I mean, it's good. It's good for business. It helps pay for the equipment that we need to upgrade each year. But the education,
right?
We need to be able to spread that further to people.
Well, and, you know, speaking of education, when we did reach out to our UT extension agents, one of the places they referenced us, of course, was the Cornell Maple Program.
Yeah.
And for me, I think reading through some of their handbooks, they had a lot of technical information that I needed to digest myself because, you know, for me, being born and raised in Tennessee, I did not have the childhood that you did growing up around production. And so, you know, me being the teacher that I am, I needed to digest this information and make sure I truly understood the process on a technical basis so that I could better explain it to folks as they're coming to our open houses. So a lot of their online resources, I did take the time to read through a lot of that and lots of information that I enjoyed. You understood a lot of it already, but for me, it really, it solidified my understanding even better.
Right. So, and that's all part of the learning curve. But you mentioned a little earlier too, as a weakness, really, in a way, you had to learn about tubing and the new technologies. That's very good. I like your list that you went to the Kentucky growers. And I know you've come to Southwest Virginia as well, and on up into Highland County. So you've done quite a bit of field work, field study, I would say. And you're not afraid to ask questions, which is another thing that, you know, because there are people out there like Brandon and others, Mike Reckland, who have seen many different situations and can say, well, this is something you might want to try. You know, I'm sure you've heard that before several times.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, yeah. Let me see if there are any other questions. Lindsay, Casey, are there any other questions that we need to address? I don't see any in the chat.
No, not that I can see, Tom. So if you have another question, feel free to ask.
Okay. Well, I have one last question, Lindsay, and that really has to do with is financing, because you brought that up a couple of times, and you don't need to go into details, of course. That's usually a personal decision. But I wondered if you've ever had to do an analysis where you were trying to justify borrowing money to help support your operation.
So yeah, that comes up every year, Tom. This isn't a one-time opportunity. It's like an every year every few months, okay, can we justify, buying this piece
Right.
to, and what it really comes down to, Tom, is this isn't a business for us.
Yeah.
It is we have it as a business. If the sales stopped tomorrow, I would still produce no matter what.
Yeah.
It's something that I want to give, my father gave to me. I want to continue the tradition, give to my kids. And I still want to, the education. I want to inform people around here that, yes, it can be done in Tennessee. But yeah, justifying, I look at it like this. If I want to spend the money on something that I enjoy doing, and at some point have the opportunity to be able to pay it back, hopefully, then we're gonna do it. And it was like that with the tubing. Ultimately, it was a pretty good upfront cost, but not just the tubing, with the understanding that yes, we're doing the tubing, but we're also going to have to do an RO. We're going to have to step up our filtration system,
Right.
just to be able to handle the amount of product that's going to come with stepping up to tubing.
Well, and something that we finally did, which I think we probably should have done this from the beginning, was truly setting aside separate accounts for our maple business. Because again, we were doing things, where his father would say, well, oh, I'll pay for this and you just pay me back. I'm just trying to keep it in the family. But we really needed to see that money flow. We needed to see, are we in the positive? Are we in the negative? And just having, the bank information of, what our sales are looking like, and having that all in one place to really see, are we truly coming out in the positive at the end of our sales?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As some people would say, they don't want to see that. They don't.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not the type of person that really needs to see that, because sometimes that can get depressing.
That's not a question I think you would ask a fisherman or a hunter. No, you're going to
No.
come out on the positive.
No.
So we really have. Looks like we have one question here. Let me see. But the question is, what are the challenges you faced in terms of letting people onto your farm for events? Specifically, logistic considerations or things you wish you had considered before hosting your first event. You want me to repeat that? What are the challenges you faced in terms of letting people onto your farm for events? And
For me, it came down to the planning.
right.
I'm as a teacher, I am very much a type A personality. I want everything planned out. I want everyone to know what their job is within the family. But something we just didn't think about was bringing in extra volunteers for that day. The first year, the crowds were, I won't say unmanageable, but to the point where I truly didn't feel like I got to finish conversations with people, because more people were coming up and asking questions and interrupting those conversations. So we did plan much more strategically the second year on how we were going to run the tours, even as far as breaking it down into stations and saying, okay, the very first station, Dawn and Gus, you're going to take the first station and this is going to be your topic. And then you're going to walk them to the second station. That's where I'm going to jump in and this is my topic. And then I'm going to move you to the third station. So truly thinking through that experience of what is a tour going to look like versus just a come and go open house. Some other things thinking about, we don't have any restroom facilities that are open to the public. So we knew right away that we were going to need to bring in porta potties, some type of restroom facilities. Another thing that we're thinking through for next year, the sugar shack itself, where we're producing the maple syrup, we are bringing the syrup after it's bottled in large gallon containers up to our home, where we do have a separate kitchen that we can use for packaging. Well, we can't bring everyone up to our home to show them that, but I wish we had a better location for sales. We were basically putting a 10 by 10 canopy up with a table and had all our products out for sales. And I said, I wish we had a designated building, even if it was like, we're working on it. Even if it was like, a roof and 3 walls, I wish we had a designated building that could be the last station that they visit to do their sampling and to do their sales. And
More-
even, yes,
More money.
and even going back before all of that, thinking things from an insurance point of view,
Absolutely.
working with our insurance agents and really explaining what our purpose is, what our goal is, and how our property and how we as homeowners and owners of the farm, how we needed to be covered, to make sure that it was going to be a good experience for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess something to explain, Tom, is we're not a full-time working farm. This is more
Right.
of a hobby farm. It's something, we don't have, and we don't have events throughout the whole year. It's basically during season that we have our events. So we do right now, or as of last year, we did 2 Saturdays. We might try to do 3 Saturdays if we have enough people to help manage the crowd. We'd gotten last year, I think we were up to what, like, I don't know. It was our last day. It was absolutely pouring down, raining, and the people just kept coming. It was, droves. I think we had like 400 people come through, and it was nothing but pouring down rain the whole day. So you had to accommodate that also. Everybody's walking around with their slickers on and umbrellas and, tramping through the woods, in the pouring rain, still wanting to, experience, what maple syrup is. So.
Well, that's great. Lindsay, did you have a comment you wanted to make on that?
No, I did not.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure. Well, I think we're getting close to the time. I wonder if you had any other last minute points you wanted to make, Candace or Lucas. We really have enjoyed this conversation and really appreciate the time you've taken out of your busy lives to spend with us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. And I guess just stay tuned and follow us on social media to hear what our 2025 season is going to look like. Again, I guess that could be another threat. We truly don't know what we're getting ourselves into as far as production and what we're going to yield. So that's going to be some really exciting data for us to track, our initial year going to tubing, and then, our future years, what our production is going to increase. So we have high hopes.
We have an idea of what we're getting into, but until we get there, I'm not sure if we're ready for it.
Well, I'm going to just share one slide with you, and maybe this will depict what we're talking about here. We welcome and thank you for your description of what you're going through, and that would be my frozen buckets on the left and tubing on the right. But it's been a joy working with you. Thank you very much for spending time with us. In summary, we've discussed the SWOT analysis, and then we've had an example, a marketing example, where we looked at some of the marketing implications, the decisions you might make, and some of the information you might need, and then we engaged Lucas and Candace in their big decision of moving from buckets to tubing. I encourage you to try the SWOT analysis. It's fairly easy, as you may have gathered. All right. Mm-hmm. I'd also encourage you in the audience to get in touch with specialists or resource persons. There's plenty of people out there, and we've only scratched the surface. We've mentioned half dozen or more tonight that you could go to. And I wish you all be safe, and we'll see you at the next webinar. And I'll turn it over to Casey and Lindsay to close us out.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you, Candace and Lucas. We appreciate you being here so much this evening. As Tom mentioned, we hope to see everyone at our next webinar, but we do have a slight change in schedule. Typically, our webinars are held on the 3rd Thursday of the month, but next month, since we will be at the West Virginia State Fair, the webinar will be held on Thursday, August 22nd. So that is actually the 4th Thursday. So it will be a little bit later in the month, but we hope that you will come out and see us at the State Fair of West Virginia while we have that little longer time period in between now and then. Casey, if you wouldn't mind launching our exit poll, that would be great. And in the chat, I have listed the website for Candace and Lucas's Maple Grove Farm, and also the link to their Facebook page. So feel free to check those out and follow along on social for all of the exciting updates that are going to be happening. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And again, a special thank you to Candace and Lucas and Dr. Tom Hammett for being here with us this evening. And we hope to see you next month, right here on the 22nd. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Candace and Lucas. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Lindsay, how did you think it went?
I thought it was great. Casey, you can stop recording now.
Yeah. I had no idea how many people attended, but I assumed it's the summertime, so we might have had a small group.
Yeah, but it was